This is what we need to do. This is going to bring that school to the next level.
That's Thinkering. This Thinkering process is going to be really transformational to all subjects that we're talking about.
The value of the Alliance is it's a thinking collective. Now we have a greater understanding amongst everyone. And that's not what's common in schools.
I always tell our students this can set you apart, make you stand out, something to remember you by. It's an opportunity to share. It's win-win all around.
I think the biggest part of what we do are the humans that we work with on the other side of that, right? Really see the human impact, the way that they're interacting and working with their community.
It really does have to flip. You should be able to think about that as your hero's journey, to be able to know this is how I was able to overcome.
And I feel like continuing that mission is really important.
Hey everybody, welcome to Thinkering Minds, the podcast where we look at the deep dive inside humanizing learning, how we make education real and relevant for not only the educators, but the learners at all stages in their life. Today with us, we have Colleen Kelley, Emmy Award winner, TEDx speaker, educator, making chemistry cool. Well, actually, chemistry's always been cool. She's just helping us realize it. Colleen, what did I miss in that intro?
I think that's great. Yeah. Especially the qualification that it's always been cool. Thank you.
That was one of the first things when I interviewed you the first time we talked about was like chemistry never clicked for me as a student. And I was always in a position where it felt like math to me. And it just, the same mental block would happen. My mind would go blank. It didn't matter whether it was on a board or in a word problem, whether I was looking at a chart. It's just my mind went blank with chemistry. And then seeing how you're able to like tap in to such young children and captivate them and keep them engaged with something that I found so intimidating my whole life is mind-blowing. What's the big call that made you realize that there was a barrier there where chemistry was cool and people would like it, but we have this perception? Like, what was the big thing that made you realize you were the one that had to tackle that?
Well, I think it was the realization when I had always worked in a little bit of a bubble myself because I surrounded myself with chemists in graduate school and, in a postdoc and a research lab. So I was always having the time of my life in this bubble. And then when I finally I'll never forget walking into a classroom of 200 students my first day as a professor and thinking, I am going to change their life. Welcome to my bubble. This is the best world possible. Move aside Disneyland. This is going to be so fun. And I walk in and I look at their faces and I, scan the audience and I'm thinking, they're not looking at me like the superhero I think I am right now, but instead more like a female Darth Vader of sorts. And then I thought, wait a minute, what is happening? Why don't these students want to be here? And why do they think I'm going to smash all of their dreams? And what's happening? So it really made me dissect what's happening outside of my happy chemistry bubble and what's going on in the world.
It's fascinating because in college, I remember every single person I met, when they were most stressed out, they was always around organic chemistry. And It was this like big barrier. So many different majors with just the place everyone crashed out was organic chemistry. Yep. And it's just so funny to see we just have this societal block when it comes to chemistry. And I think if we realized that it was relevant to anything and everything that we loved and were passionate about and applicable, that block might disappear. How do you think we address the block? Is it engagement and just making it fun? Is that the key?
No, it took me a long time. Originally I did think that was it, right? Like I thought, well, if I can, be funny-ish, I'm not a stand-up, so try. But, try all the things I could to engage my students. But really, when I realized that none of that was even working very well, it was okay. But when you have a classroom of students who are getting A's in everything since they could tie their shoes, right? You recognize that they are good students, whatever that means, but they have been successful academically their entire lives. And then they hit organic chemistry. So it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of preparation or motivation. They all want to be doctors, nurses, dentists, or engineers. So they're high achievers. and yet they're failing and they're frustrated. And, where does that come from? Fun can only be had with literacy. And so I realized that I was teaching 200 students at a time that were coming to college, and for the most part were molecularly illiterate, right? And so books aren't fun if you're not literate. Nothing's fun if you're not literate. So if I did a postdoc in France and I'd go to the movies and they were in French, movies weren't fun for me because I couldn't understand anything that people were saying. Parties weren't fun for me because people all around me were speaking French and I barely could speak it. So I think it was important for me to recognize what's happening, what's this barrier. And when I realized that they can't see what I see, meaning that when I draw a molecule that looks like a hexagon, I see so much in that. And they might see a hexagon and be like, why the heck is she drawing shapes on the board? I had one student say, you're always drawing stop signs. What are these stop signs? I'm like, well, first of all, stop sign's 8 sides, so that's a problem. Hexagon 6. But so there's a lot to unpack there. So I think my research is so pioneering and what I'm doing is so pioneering is because it's not about putting a professor in front of the classroom and making explosions or being funny or showing cool videos or even saying, hey, this is how it relates to the real world. None of that can be unpacked for a student unless they're literate. So we really have to go back to the beginning and say, how do we develop molecular literacy so that it can be fun? And I always say to people, you can bake a loaf of bread without knowing how to read, right? So that for years, students have been working around things. But when you can read a recipe or when you can read things and then tie it to an action, then it becomes fun and you don't feel so... I imagine my students never felt grounded. Right? They were just somewhat there, but not really. And then just trying to piece something together.
Yeah, that's how it was for me in a lot of the science and math related stuff was like, I could get the answer, but I didn't know how I got the answer. And I didn't really understand the work behind it. So I could, I can get the B, I can get the A. Ask me to explain how I got there, not happening. So that context is like, it's really everything. I know you didn't get started thinking that you were going to jump into chemistry. It started with like mystery novels and a love of like unraveling the puzzle and figuring out where the pieces fit.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of times I think folks assume, and my students in particular assume that I came from a background where I had a beaker in my hand since I was a toddler. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm a first-generation college student, not expected to go to college. Education was not valued in my home. So I gravitated to books. I loved the library and that was free. So I read a ton of books. I read a lot of Agatha Christie novels. And one thing I realized, I was trying to figure out, I pinpointed that my love of reading and voracious love of solving mysteries led to my love of chemistry. But the other thing that reading does that a chemist brain needs is words are two-dimensional, but when you're reading, it's three-dimensional in your brain. So I always use Harry Potter as an example. I'm old enough to know Harry Potter before the movies existed. So if you read Harry Potter, you created that whole world in your head. And then when the movie came out, you're like, whoa, that's not what I thought it looked like. Or maybe that's exactly how I imagined Hagrid. So that 2D to 3D world where you're going from a piece of paper to an imagination, critically important in organic chemistry. So when I was talking about the hexagon, and me seeing it bend and flop, that's the same thing. So I think those neural pathways I had open to me that allowed chemistry to be fun for me because I could access that. But perhaps if you weren't into reading and imagination when you were younger, coupled with some other things going on, you may not ever have access to that world of chemistry.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite things that you've told me was your story of the nuclear fallout.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that sparked my curiosity with all of this was in 7th grade, the loudspeakers went out in the middle of my 7th grade English class, and there was a muddled announcement that sounded something like, school is closing, which is great, because it's raining radiation. And at 7th grade, you're like, it is raining radiation. What is better day than this? So we got on the bus to go home because school was closed, and we got to our stop, and our driver instructed us to take our coats and put them over our heads like an umbrella. because he told us that would shield us from nuclear fallout. So apparently a windbreaker is good at shielding nuclear fallout, which was, of course, not the truth. But there were all these kind of misconceptions going on, raining radiation, using your windbreaker to protect you from nuclear fallout, getting home and my parents not understanding what's happening. And I just recognized globally that there was a community around me in the midst of something that seemed quite serious and also quite cool, and nobody could explain it to me. And I didn't see any radiation. I didn't see why it was dangerous. I didn't see any of it. And yet it was all still there. And there was no one in the community to explain it. So I think I look back on that incident as something that this was the near nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island that happened in central Pennsylvania. And so while it was very life-threatening, no one seemed to understand why. And I would say 99% of the population would still not be able to explain what a nuclear meltdown what would happen and what the results of that would be.
Yeah, it's fascinating how just really relevant the basic chemistry understanding is towards everything. We just don't understand these things at a natural level. Why do you think we have this hesitation towards leaning into it? Because we all know it's cool, but we're also just intimidated by it. Is it that we've been told it's hard for so long that we just don't give it a shot? Or is the education system just not introducing it to us at an early enough age where we're still enthralled and curious about the world?
Yeah, it's so much. When I say chemistry needs a rebranding, it's top to bottom. I wish we could just start all over again with everything that you mentioned, because it's based on symbols, and part of those symbols are also numbers. But that when you draw, they look like shapes, but you've seen the whiteboard with all the shapes on them that are really molecules. So there's so much that's cryptic about it. And we need to start early so that cryptic language becomes, literacy. But then because that hasn't been developed, then it just becomes only for those that can understand it. So it becomes this like only for those in the white lab coats, crazy hair kind of people. And then, so it becomes a secret society, and, everybody else is expected to fail. So the rebranding has to start from the beginning. And it's just recognition. Again, if you've ever been to anywhere in the world, like I've been to Israel and to China, those signs I can't read at all. And so that's what chemistry is to all students when they're looking at those symbols. It just is lost. And so then the lore becomes, it's hard, just get through it. It's not really for you. Or, you can do it with math. It's all based on math, which organic chemistry, there's no math or very little math. It just needs a huge rebranding, and the problems are not really one thing, but it's just been a cascade of events for, I would say, arguably almost a decade now. Dislodging that in education is rough.
What's the biggest hurdle to dislodging that? Is there?
I would say what I uncovered could dislodge all of that and give us the rebrand we need. If we teach chemistry like we teach reading and start at 8 years old, all of that will change. I'm certain of that, because my research shows learning chemistry is like learning to read. And if we use the same strategies that we use for teaching reading in teaching chemistry, all of that will go away. There'll be a more comfortable understanding. So when I say literacy, I really mean literacy, meaning that literacy in the written word, it creates comfort, right? When you can read, all of a sudden the world is like, wow. I remember driving with my son when he first learned how to read, and he would read every speed limit sign. And the speed limit 25, speed limit 45, because he was so excited he could read, right? And know the numbers. So that excitement comes with knowing the periodic table and being able to write formulas and all of that. So I don't think no one's been actively trying to make this like a secret society, but no one's ever actually thought about it like literacy before either. So I think we should at least give this a shot and see where we go with this.
Is there too early of an age to start?
Well, you need to be able to read first. So that neural pathway has to be strong and strengthened. So I say 8 just as a ballpark, but if you have a 6-year-old who's reading at a 3rd or 4th grade level, then go for it. So it really just depends on the comfort of the child with reading. If they're prolific readers already, then that's great. If somebody is struggling with reading, then that would be hard for them to start until they're ready.
Yeah, we talked last time about how a lot of what you do, there's a visual element, there's an audio element, and then there's also a guided element.
I think when we have, just different types of learners, I don't even want to categorize learners, but when we have different types of those, we can enhance the understanding. If a child is reading my comic book and listening to the voiceover actors at the same time, all of a sudden then there's a merger in their brain between a 2-dimensional page, a sound, and a voice, and then the 3-dimensional image is created in their brain. So if you have someone who is maybe a lower level reader in a class, which you're going to have that, you're going to have various levels of reading, even in the same grade level. If you have a weaker level reader and they're listening, they're on the same page as someone who's reading it more than they're listening. So you're going to have those children who are listening more than reading, those that are reading more than listening, but I doubt the two are going to be equal at the same time. Now, what keeps them on the same page are the images, right? So a comic book is great because they're boxes. So you can follow along box to box. So whether you're reading more than listening or listening more than reading, it's still image driven. So that also helps with the merger of what I've created.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but having those box, breaking it down almost, it takes it step by step. So instead of seeing, the big paragraphs and words all on this page and it's chapters and where is that nugget that we're looking for? It's box 7 and we're on box 7 until we get it and we're excited to move on to box 8. And it makes things a lot more, I think, simple to take in. You're not lost in this sea of information. You can focus in on what's relevant right here and right now and easily look back a frame for context and get that. So that's real cool there. Another thing you touched on is this, you keep bringing up this idea of connecting the 2-dimensional to the 3-dimensional. And the thought that came into my head is that when learning takes place, is when we connect the 2-dimensional with the 3-dimensional? Is that when we really learn?
I think that's when we really learn processes, right? So I don't know how to define learning, but I think a process has to be visualized and imagined. So it's called systems learning. So we're talking about systems where you're seeing the whole big picture and then you can see the smaller picture. When I say see, I don't mean see visually, I mean imagine. So I think imagination is a huge holder of that process of learning. So can you learn things without imagination? Probably. But I think the deeper understanding comes from going 2D to 3D in that imaginary world. So you were talking about comic books and how, it's not like a chapter where there's just like a sea of words. If you're familiar with the comedian Nate Bargatze, he has like a hilarious thing about, he's like, I read a book and it's like, will you just give me a break? It's just words after words. Put in a blank page please put in a blank page. Like he's really funny about it. And I listened to he has a new book out called Big Dumb Eyes. It's hilarious to listen to, but he talks about that. And even in his book, he puts a blank page in just because he's like, I can't stand it when there's just words after words after words. So it's pretty funny.
I'm a reader, but sometimes I feel that way where I just have my mind will need a break. I realize I've read this paragraph 4 times in a row and nothing is stuck. And I keep making myself skip dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay, I just need a blank page to stare at for 5 minutes so I can just recuperate and get back to it. One of the things that I really like that you do with your comic books is you connect with students to help create the art for them, and that just seems like such an awesome so many people just rely on a professional artist who's tried and proven and you went and found talent and gave them an opportunity to participate in something big and awesome. And that's really cool.
Yeah, I have several artists that I work with now. But initially, the first artist I worked with was one of my former students, Mackenzie. And she was in my class and she knew the chemistry and was good at it. but then she was going on to art school. So she was going to Savannah College of Art and Design. So I was trying to launch this project and drawing the characters myself, but I was basically drawing like squares that were elements, like with feet and arms, just like walking boxes. So Mac took that concept and we worked together to create what you see now. So she's what's called a concept artist. When I need a new character developed, we can get on a Zoom call and just discuss features and what we want it to look like. At my publishers, I have another youngster, Krista, who then takes the concept art or whatever Mac has developed and then makes it the flavor of the series. So Mac might develop a character that's just, in isolation. And then Krista makes sure that that character and that idea and that concept fits in the whole series and kind of looks like we want it to look like. So I've got a bunch of up and coming artists who have been working on this and really grateful for their talents. For sure, they're going places because they're incredibly talented.
So for the educators out there who have an idea that they want to put on paper or bring to life, like what's the spark that helped you kind of like get over the fear of creating and putting it out there and taking change into your own hands? Did you have that administrative buy-in or did you just jump in and do it? What was the motivation to just start making change?
Yeah, I really just acted autonomously on this. I just started doing it like a hobby almost, and just tried to see how far I could get. It's over a decade old now, and so the initial characters that I developed and the stories I wrote are there. You can see the genesis of it, but they look so different as well. So they're very crude. I've always just liked creating, and it just seemed necessary. If there needed to be a gap filled for teaching this, and I had this idea. So I just kept plugging along with it. And then it really didn't get legs until 2019, 2020. It really started in 2019. And then when 2020, when the pandemic hit, I had, more time and was able to sit and write and create at that time.
There's so many hats you wear, the Emmy Award winner, and there's TEDx speaker, and there's educator, and there's author. It just keeps going on and on and on. I love it. But then there's also your alternate persona, Chemistry Colleen, with the YouTube channel as well. How does that play into thing? You're empowering students, young adults, parents to help realize that chemistry is not uncool or scary through these kids. It's so many hats and it all is empowering so many people. What got you started with the YouTube channel and how did that come about?
I went kicking and screaming on that one. I did not want to do that. That wasn't my thing. It was really my son and his friends who were just hounding me nonstop to get on YouTube or TikTok and really start creating. And I agreed to do the first one about bread. So, and then from that one, then there came a second. Now there's 15 and some shorts and some other things. So when I look back on it, it was really just a way for me to get out my stories in a different format, but also in a way that wasn't written. So if to the audience that can't read yet, the 3 and 4 year olds, how can I reach those? And video is a good way to do that.
Yeah, I saw one that I really liked. It was like you pulling out a giant stalk of celery and then like, we're going to turn this into a bracelet. And then it's just like, snap, how do we do this? And it's just like that whole process is so cool. I love it. With the coming up down the line, like what's next for both Colleen Kelley and Chemistry Colleen?
I mean, really what I want to finish the series, the comic book series. There's 4 of the 10 developed. And so, at this point, I'm really just want to get numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 out. And so that requires funding and raising money and all of the above. The ideas for the scripts are there. Script 5 is mostly written, but I just really need to kind of pound doors and get some funding. That's my primary objective right now, is to get those remaining comic books done so that there is a complete series.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll help you pound those doors because these need to get done. I saw my favorite character of yours so far, Led Z. That's the one that I like the most so far. What's your favorite character that you have?
I also love Led Z a lot, but I would say close. She's just close behind Big Ox. I just love Big Ox. Big Ox just is jovial, fun, funny, and just such an important character as oxygen. So, and I love when Big Ox comes into a story. The kids go crazy because they'll see posters of Big Ox in my classroom. Like, when do I get to meet that character? So, I really love how lovable Big Ox has become.
Yeah, when I see Big Ox, I think that's like the perfect like little throw pillow for the bed. Would be like
Yeah.
a Big Ox throw pillow. That would
Yeah.
look really good. How much time do you spend on character creation? Because from an outsider perspective, they're so well thought out. It seems like you just fall in love with that aspect of it and probably spend more time than you're supposed to on it. Because it just seems like you can tell the characters are loved and they have like a full life and a personality, and they're well fleshed out. How much time do you spend creating them?
Weeks, if not months. It takes a long time to kind of flesh out who this, you get the initial idea and maybe the initial personality. And then as time goes on, you layer on things like Poppy initially has evolved. She was initially just a little bit more like Thelma and Scooby-Doo. And then as time goes on, I'm like, you know what? I think Poppy is one of those people that tries to meditate, but can't meditate, but she'd like to meditate. And she knows meditation's good for her. And she's trying to be more Zen, but she's also super type A. And I get a lot of my inspiration from, there's a podcast called 10% Happier. That has nothing to do with Poppy, but I always feel like Poppy's the audience that podcast is trying to reach. Like, let's teach Poppy how to meditate a little bit better.
Such real character development. Your characters for the chemistry comic books have our target audience members for podcasts.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. With the characters, to me, put the children in a position where it's not. When I was learning about chemistry, it was something that adults were doing. People in white lab coats, it was gatekept. It was for adults, and we could learn about it, but not until we were old enough to don the white lab coat and get the job do we get to do chemistry. And it seems like your characters are the absolute inverse of that. They're naturally involved through just the curiosity of life, and chemistry, being involved in everything, just naturally plays into that. Is that by design, or is that just good luck?
Yeah, it's by design. Yeah, I say to everyone, the chemistry shouldn't be obvious when you read my comic books. It's going to be subtle and profound and hit you so hard, like, wow, I learned all this and I didn't know I was learning it. So I say it's a bit like a kale smoothie. If you were blindfolded, you wouldn't know it was green. Yeah. So, or for in the case, it's like, or make it purple, but put a ton of kale in there or whatever. But so I kind of make it so that it is seamless, like a smoothie, that it is, the chemistry is there, the kids are doing it, they're learning it, they're also solving the mysteries using it, and it's not, it doesn't look hard to the reader.
There's also an interesting thing that having characters helping you explore chemistry does, which is there's a social emotional piece to it all that ties in real life and positivity and encountering hurdles and overcoming. And I like that there's heroes journeys, even in something, is intended for these young children. It's fully fleshed out, and it's one of the coolest things I've seen. What other iterations are coming? Because there's, comic books. You told me about an animated series potentially.
We're working on that. Yep. There's a Big Ox is going to be in that for sure. He'll have a starring role. I mean, who doesn't love Big Ox? So yeah. So it would be, Chemistry Colleen was, the YouTube channel was made because I really wanted to make a series. And anyway, things didn't work out the first time around. So now I'm back on round 2, trying it again.
What is the format for the series going to be? Like, based off the comic books? Is it the comic books brought to life and animated, or is it going to be different content?
Well, we're still working on that, but I would say it's going to be different. Yeah, the characters will be similar or the same. But everything else will be different.
As long as Big Ox is there.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. In my head, all of your characters would convert so well to like a video game. Just something about, they all have main character energy. I like it. There are no side characters. So with like upcoming, like big hurdle that you have to tackle in 2025, what's the big thing on your plate that really matters to you as far as just making a dent in the movement to make chemistry, what it needs to be recognized, essential, cool, fun, creative outlet?
I mean, it's a big hurdle for 2025 and beyond is getting the books in as many kids' hands as possible, whether that's through a library experience, a classroom set is bought, or parents buy it and the kids are reading it in the backseat of the car on the way to soccer practice. So however the kids can get their hands on these books to begin their own journey of molecular literacy, which is possible. I wrote them so that it's child-led, so that there doesn't need to be a teacher, there doesn't need to be a parent instructing it. There doesn't need to be parental or adult involvement at all. The child can navigate it just fine on his or her own. So that's the big hurdle, is how do we get these books out? Because once they're in a child's hand, the child loves the book. And so the gatekeepers are the adults thinking, well, this, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, get over yourselves, give your child a great book, and they're going to learn a ton of chemistry and thank you for it. So really just that's the hurdle, is getting adults to, whether you're a teacher or a parent, or whatever, purchase the book for a child. I swear you'll change their lives.
Yeah, if the adult is anything like me, they also need to be reading it, because they probably they were probably intimidated by chemistry too, and there's some catching up to do as well.
But they don't have to. I mean, I'd love for them to, but I think that's it, right? You never want to give your child a book that you wouldn't understand, but you got to get over yourself. Yeah, it's called progress. Let's do it.
Yeah, in the name of progress, let's all start reading our chemistry comic books and bettering ourselves. I like it. Yeah. Well, Colleen, I appreciate you being here with us today. And we'll drop links to Kids Chemical Solutions and Chemistry Colleen YouTube. And any funders out there listening, we will be knocking on your door. So get ready, open up those checkbooks. Is there anything else you want to add to the audience?
No, I would just say if you are considering helping out the mission, consider buying a ton of books and then donating them to a school. That's really what I would like to see is, donate these books, buy them and donate them to underserved neighborhoods or to schools that you love. I think that would be a really great way to help contribute. No, I really want people to, if you're considering funding, just buy a ton of books and give them to a school. Like that's the easiest thing you can do, or give them to a library. I think then we're not mirrored in layers of just open your checkbook, buy, $100 worth of books, give them to a school, and that'll start the movement.
Love the term thinkering, and we'll definitely use it in my classroom. The kids will love it.
This is where we can be that peer support network with each other. When the big picture clicks, it's beautiful when you get administrators and teachers together.
You can't be a leader of other people if you can't first lead yourself, right?
Help the educator have a very clear and structured framework.
Becomes this real community hub. If you're a great educator, you're looking for the most powerful moment. Can we inspire kids to believe that the world needs who they were made to be?
I hope that you guys continue to uphold that legacy and continue, finding kids like me.